right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this conversation about mastering Microsoft 365 margins. My name is Rich Freeman. I'm the moderator for this discussion here. I'm also the Chief Content Officer at Channel Mastered, which is a consultancy. We work with vendors, help them launch and optimize MSP channel programs. I'm also the author of a blog called Channelholic, which you can find at channelholic.news if you are curious. But let's get into the topic at hand here right now. You know, in a lot of ways, Microsoft 365 is the most familiar topic, familiar product in managed services, and yet it's surprising how many misconceptions there are still sort of persistently lingering out there. You know, that everybody's using it already. There's no upside in Microsoft 365. It's difficult to secure. And above all, it's impossible to make money with. And so we're going to get into some of those misconceptions. We might debunk a few of them. We're certainly going to talk about some strategies for overcoming them to the degree that those really are issues. And I'm very happy to be joined by two people who are perfect guests for this conversation. Dustin Sitton from Insight Automation and Brian Fravel from Vade. I'm going to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves to you. I'll start with you, Dustin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dustin Sitton, and I'm the principal of Insight Automation. We are a low-code software development company. So we help especially MSPs recognize value from their existing customer base by showing everyone, including the MSP and all of their customers, how to make the most out of their Office 365 subscription. There are so many amazing tools in there, Power Apps, Power Automate, SharePoint Teams that we can use to build software to help run organizations end to end. And we just help everyone unlock that value. So we are what we do.
Okay, awesome. And we will get into some of those tools you just mentioned there. Brian, your turn. Introduce folks to yourself and to Vade.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Brian Fravel. I'm VP of Marketing at Vade. We are an AI email security platform that filters out things like phishing, spear phishing, and malware. And as I'm sure many of you know, the attacks get more sophisticated and harder to detect. As security and Microsoft and folks like us gets better, they are keeping up with us, and so that's where our AI engine comes in.
Okay. Those of you who registered for the event before might have been expecting a third panelist. Andrew, he was unable to join us due to a last-minute issue. Sends his apologies. I'm sure he will show up on a future channel program webinar. And then last bit of housekeeping before we move on. If you have questions, go ahead and use the comments panel off to the right-hand side of your screen there and put those in there. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll look for an opportunity to maybe do a little Q&A at some point during the conversation here. But with that, let's dive right into it. You know, one of the reasons, there are a lot of people, I'm guessing most of the people in our audience are reselling and supporting Microsoft 365 to some extent, but it's not generally a really high intensity focus area in my experience for a lot of MSPs, because of the perception that it is a low margin service. And what's responsible for that perception and that idea that there isn't money to be made with Microsoft 365? Dustin, I'll start with you.
So that answer has changed over the years that we've been in business. But you know, many MSPs have started their own private clouds way back when, right? They're hosting things for their customers, and to let that go, they consider it part of their secret sauce, right? That's part of their differentiator. And to take that differentiator away and just go to Office 365 and now we're beholden to them, I'm not in control anymore. I've seen that be a big reason why. But I remember there was this one MSP I still am very close friends with today. The owner is a guy named Jim, and he started in mass bringing me a ton of work for us to collaborate on and do together. And I said, Jim, what flipped? And he said, well, Windows 2008 servers are out of pocket, and all my clients are on these old servers with their accounting systems. It's a pain in the butt for me to migrate them. I make more money giving them to you to put them on a modern system right? I get some licensing money from that. I would have lost so much time and effort and frustration hoisting them onto new hardware, all the disruption of getting them on upgraded versions of everything they're on. Once they're in the cloud, we're done. And he said, Dustin, the secret is I'm still charging them the same monthly amount I was charging them before I had to maintain all those servers. Plus, I'm getting licensing money from Microsoft as well. And plus, I got to help be engaged in this project, and we made money on the project. So he said, the second I moved one client to you, the dam broke, and I realized, hey, I don't want to be in this space anymore. And then I started hearing that message more and more often from folks. So I think that's those that are still holding on. I've worked so hard to build up this infrastructure. Now it's starting to become apparent that, like, hey, what's on-prem isn't even keeping parity anymore. What's in the cloud, right? It's not even the same software anymore. There was a time when Power BI on-prem had the exact same feature set as Power BI in the cloud. That's no longer the case. All of these tools from Microsoft and even other vendors, you're getting more for less in the cloud these days, and they're sort of missing it because they're trying to hold on to the differentiation. There's other ways to differentiate.
And what's really interesting about that input that you got is that a lot of people focus on the relatively low margin that Microsoft is paying on the licensing, but they don't kind of factor into the calculation the overhead cost of maintaining that hardware, which is exactly what you were talking about there.
Yeah, their staff is patching it, they're maintaining it, they're doing upgrades, they're dealing with hardware failures. None of that happens anymore. I mean, it's literally just collecting a check, and it's not just that one small amount. There's other ways we can explore together to make even more out of that channel. And so those that have made the switch, I've never seen someone go back. I'll put it that way. I mean, they've found that it's a better mousetrap to move. So,
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's a mistake also to think that Microsoft 365 is a one size fits all. I like to view it as kind of the nucleus, and then what can you build around that? And that really gets down to knowing who your customer is and what do they need. If they have really sensitive data, need an extra layer of security. So I, offer a gold, silver, bronze type of bundle package, or services, or training to get the most out of Microsoft 365. Are they a basic user and need some help? So now you have e-learning opportunities or support. So if you start to view it as the total service and value I'm giving to my customer, Microsoft 365 is just the beginning. You build your services off of that.
And the other thing I always like to bring up in that context is there is a lot going on in that Microsoft 365 suite, and most Microsoft 365 users aren't using most of it, meaning that their Outlook, PowerPoint, Teams, you bet, but like SharePoint, when you introduce a customer to all the really cool things you can do with SharePoint, it's just a revelation to them sometimes. And that's project work, that's more management, recurring revenue, et cetera. So there are a lot of different ways to kind of turn Microsoft 365 into the gift that keeps giving, essentially.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, once they're in, you're right. And it's just like when you bought your first smartphone, you didn't stop the purchase there. You went into the App Store and you bought more apps and things like that. Once you're there, there's more money to be made. It's not just that Office 365 license. They're going to want SharePoint, and there are add-ons to SharePoint. They're going to have Teams, but I just bought Teams Premium. Why? Because it summarizes my meetings for me. It takes my notes for me, not just transcription. It's actually doing the work that we used to do. I will happily spend $7 a month for it to take better notes than me. You know what I mean? So both internally for us and for a lot of clients, they find that it's that gateway once they're in, and then they can start selling a lot more. For sure.
And Dustin, that's a great example. I use the same. I love that feature. Had someone not told me that, I would have never known to even ask. So oftentimes your customers don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and part of my job is to help train the MSPs so they can be in that position of the trusted advisor. And then, I love doing lunch and learns with my MSP partners to show everybody in the organization, like, hey, here's all the new features coming. And here's how to best position them. Here's what to be listening for, so they can be out there differentiating themselves and also finding new paths to revenue and also delighting their clients, for sure.
So, Brian, one of the issues that keeps MSPs from going all in on Microsoft 365 is this perception that the margins are meager, you can't make money there. Another issue that keeps some people from going all in is this perception that anything cloud-based is just inherently insecure compared to anything on premises. I mean, there are certainly security risks and threats in the SaaS world and the Microsoft 365 world, and we can all think of stories in the news where that's come up. But from your perception, are cloud-based applications like Microsoft 365 sort of inherently risky compared to the on-prem alternatives?
That may have been the case when cloud first came out, but even then, I think a lot of people would just, if I can't see it, touch it, feel it, it must be. And there's the fear of the unknown, and it's insecure. But I think today you could argue in most cases the cloud is probably more secure. I mean, there's the benefits obviously of cost and maintenance and things like that, but also if you have something on-prem, you basically need someone 24/7 making sure, a patch comes out today. Well, Bob's on vacation. We'll get to it on Monday, and then guess what? You have a breach on Sunday. When you go with a cloud provider, they provide all that. That's part of the benefit. You have 24/7 security monitoring and things that most people with an on-prem think they do a good job of, but they're probably not resourced to do as good a job as they need to.
Yeah, for a long time, that's really been my feeling about this kind of thing too, is I know there are a lot of people in this audience who are very good at security and rightly proud of the security services that they offer, but the security services and security personnel Microsoft has on the job are just flat out world class. And they have this incredible SIM and a SOC and threat intelligence and you name it. And it's just hard for any MSP really to compete with that. So it just feels like partnering with whoever it is, Microsoft, Google, or whoever, who has the millions and millions of dollars to invest in security, it's likelier to get you to a more secure outcome. So one of the big security risks in cloud and elsewhere, Brian, is phishing. It's one of the biggest M365 threat vectors. What are your kind of recommendations? What are the most effective strategies from a VADE standpoint in mitigating that particular risk?
Yeah, there's really two main ones, I would say. One is obviously if you can keep the phishing, spear phishing emails out, that's the goal. But no solution out there is 100%. But there's a misperception that Microsoft's base security, being for say like Outlook, is good enough, where in reality the bad guys are very motivated. It's no longer the phishing email with a ton of grammar mistakes, misspellings. Give me your bank account for somewhere in Nigeria or something like that. That's relatively easy to get. Today, what we see is very targeted spear phishing attacks where they actually know something about probably the individual they're going after, the organization, what the company does. So it feels very real to the person getting that. That's a lot more difficult to capture. And oftentimes Microsoft, what they offer doesn't get those types of things. So an added layer of protection on top of Microsoft to keep out these really sophisticated attacks would be my first point. The second point is end user awareness. Even if you get 99.9% of the spear phishing and phishing attacks, that 0.1% can destroy a company. And so educating your users on what to look for and when to be skeptical, and maybe consult your IT department before downloading or clicking on something, helps to make sure that when something does get through, that nothing malicious happens.
So you were talking about sophisticated attacks and attacker creativity, and I've got to bring this up because literally a half an hour ago, I was contacted by the PR folks at VADE about some research you guys published today involving, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, a crishing attack against a US-based MSP, crishing as in QR ishing. There was a QR code involved. Can you tell folks just a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know how to pronounce it either. So we'll go with Christian, and maybe you and I have coined a new industry term. So it was a very specific attack on one specific one of our MSPs that uses Vade. It was not a mass attack. It was just one. And what they did is they had a very compelling looking email that looked like part of the Microsoft authentication, authenticator app. And what they wanted you to do is to scan this QR code. It went to a spoof web page that looked just like it was Microsoft. And then what they were using is harvesting user credentials. And so what we're seeing now is, as filters get better at getting to these spear phishing attacks and even phishing attacks, they're moving to QR codes, which are a little bit more difficult to get. And then also, as long as once I get it into the inbox and I start scanning it, now I'm on phone, I'm outside of email. So it's even more important to get it beforehand. So that's just a case study, one example, how they're no longer blasting people, millions, thousands of people. They're going after one individual with one very specific tactic.
And I'll just quickly add in that fake security website that you were pointed to. If you scanned the QR code, had a .ru domain, which probably should have been a clue there was a problem, but people don't look. And
back to end user, but that that's why you need to educate the end users. Is even if it looks legitimate, there are still normally signs that you can tell if you pay attention.
So we're talking about defending against threats, but the topic of the webinar here is margins and boosting Microsoft 365 margins. So do you have any advice, Brian, for folks in the audience about using security and the SMB's need for security help as a way to increase the value of that bundle, that Microsoft 365 service that you're delivering to customers?
Yeah, probably the best that we've seen, the MSPs that are most successful, is they build some sort of bundle. So, there's lots of security most businesses need: network, email, backup, encryption, the end user training. And so building a bundle for, good, better, best, bronze, silver, gold. And then it really comes down to understanding your customer and what they need. But that kind of three-tiered model, I mean, it's done in all sorts of industries. It's the triple cheeseburger effect. Oftentimes people will go to the middle one. If you price correctly, you potentially can make more margin. And then the other thing that I think is helpful is we provide a lot of our MSPs case studies on other businesses. Here's what's happened when something gets through. And as a marketer, I don't love selling on fear and uncertainty and doubt, but when you're selling to a small, medium business, one breach probably puts them under. So sometimes people think, oh, I don't need it. They're going after the big guys. What we see now with these sophisticated one-off attacks, more and more, the attacks are after small and medium businesses. They're easier than some of the sophisticated enterprise security.
Dustin, one of the reasons that Microsoft 365 is a low margin offering for a lot of MSPs is that they're basically offering the exact same thing as everybody else, and they're sort of wandering into the commoditization trap around Microsoft 365. So how does that trap sort of affect your margins on Microsoft 365, and what kind of suggestions can you make about or for avoiding commoditization? You are muted, sir.
Rookie mistake. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry, everyone. So where was I? You're entering a field where things constantly shift and change, and many are holding on to the way they've been doing things. I remember the last time I bought a car, the people at the salespeople were like, I just wanted to sell cars. Now I need to know more about smartphones than I do cars, because everybody wants to ask me about the entertainment systems and how everything hooks up. And that's not what I signed up for. And all I could think was, that's true, but that's the world we're in now. right? And you're going to have to learn those extra features. So, I understood before you were focused on this layer of email and file servers and, the core basics. That's been all abstracted away for you, right? So now it's time to learn a level up and start learning how to pair the iPhone with the car. Start learning what are all those other things in that Office 365 ecosystem. That's how you differentiate yourself, right? It's no longer about my file serving solution being better than your file solution. This is how we do it. We're cheaper. It's no, we have mastered all that's in Office 365. It's a network of partners. There's a lot we're doing ourselves. We're not just going to lift and shift your files into SharePoint. We're going to show you how to use it as a development. And the MSPs that are embracing everything the SaaS platform has to offer, they're making more money. They're differentiating themselves by being better at what they do in the context of today's expectations of what a customer expects out of their business.
Dustin, I think I told you this story when we were preparing for this webinar a few weeks back. I vividly remember being on stage moderating a panel at an event a couple of years ago. One of the panelists was an MSP who was telling a story about this Power BI app that he had developed for one of his customers, and the customer loved it. And so this MSP was selling it into all of his accounts, and it was a big moneymaker for him. And I'm looking out at the MSPs in the audience, and the eyes are all glazing over because they hear Power BI and they think, I don't know that. I don't know how to code. That's not what we do. So I'm happy for this guy, but this is not for me. Talk a little bit about Power BI, the opportunity around that for MSPs, and what you would say to that MSP who's thinking, I just don't do that.
It's to me, that conversation is no different than the conversations that an MSP would have with Brian at Fade, right? Like, Brian is here because he's specialized in that security aspect of what they do, and they augment an MSP's capabilities. What we do at Inside Automation is no different. You're right. You're not. You are the generalist or the internist here, right? And Brian and I, are your experts to help you get the rest of the way there to give you world-class security in the case of Brian, and world-class software development, in the case of Inside Automation. So that's the role they should see themselves in, as the general doctor, the internist, and they should surround themselves with partners that are capable of fulfilling these things. And yeah, don't put your head in the sand. Learn enough to have the conversations to recognize when to bring your partners in. Know the basics. We are in tech because we love this stuff, right? So let's learn as much as we can. That's what keeps me going. There's always something new around the corner, so let's embrace it.
So, maybe just to put people in a zone, in a ballpark, you've probably seen a lot of Power BI applications and implementations among MSPs. What are some examples of successful ways you've seen MSPs go to market with Power BI? What specifically do they do with it, and how profitable are those offerings?
Well, first of all, for the MSPs themselves, right? They all have BrightGauge, right? That's the industry standard, and there's nothing wrong with BrightGauge, except everyone has BrightGauge and they're trying to differentiate. So we've had great success with MSPs building Power BI for them directly, right? And letting them we work with MSPs that have M&A'd multiple other MSPs, right? And now they've got an organization, some of which is on Autotask, some of it's on Synchro, some of it's on ConnectWise, but they want one unified set of reports until they finally unify everybody with a single source of truth. We'll build that using that, and we'll give them reports that they can show in their QBRs, their quarterly meetings with their customers, that look beautiful, that show them all the good they're doing and how they're keeping them safe and secure, and how quickly they're answering tickets. And then using that same data set, here's the reports for the C-suite to see, right? Of, who's got the most reopens, just things that help differentiate you from the norm. That's the first way. But the other way is for their customers themselves, of course. We're bringing all their systems together in one place to see all of that data. When you do that, 1 + 1 starts to equal 3, right? And the beauty of business intelligence is it's like fashion. Fashion is never finished. There's always more reports to create. And when people start seeing this amazing blend Power BI can do of giving them actionable insights and AI-based predictions and natural language query, they start to see like, wow, this is what the SaaS tools are capable of. I want more. Power BI is often the gateway drug, that we use to get people understanding like we can do a lot more with these tools that can never be done on a server in the closet. So there you go.
That MSP I was on stage with who was talking about Power BI used that exact same term, gateway drug, that you get that first solution up there and people can't have enough at that point. And the other thing you reminded me of from that conversation, you referenced BrightGauge. The reason that first Power BI project happened is this MSP was giving an office tour to one of his customers. And he said at one point, and that over there is BrightGauge. It's our dashboard for how the entire technical team is performing. And the customer looked at it and said, wow, that's awesome. Why don't I have one of those? Great question, right? And then that was the first solution. And the customer does not know to ask for that unless they kind of see that it's a possibility. And so you've got to open their eyes to what Power BI can do.
And that's my job, is to educate the MSP, so the MSP educates their customers. That's providing value, right? If I talk to that exact example, if I met with two MSPs and one goes, look at all these amazing tools that we use to run our organization, our MSP, we can't wait to show you what we can do to help you. That's a much more compelling case than, in my opinion, differentiator than we've been providing services, none of our customers have been hacked. To me, that's the baseline. That's an expectation, right? What are you doing beyond that? The basics of keeping your customers secure. I don't mean that in a negative way, Brian. Of course, we have to keep everything secure. I'm just saying,
no offense.
but that's an expectation. That's the bar. What are you doing beyond that? This is that beyond.
So we've been talking about Power BI, but another part of that Power tool set that people get with M365 is Power Automate. Similar kind of question. What have you seen MSPs do with Power Automate that's worked for them?
We love helping MSPs with Power Automate. For them themselves, sending out a first response in trouble tickets using it. I mean, Power Automate is my favorite in the entire Power platform, with all the different things we can do with it. I could spend this entire webinar, just talking about all the amazing things that we have done with it, from document generation, the automatic scheduling of approvals of invoices is something that's very popular. Just any sort of busy work that an organization has, you already own Power Automate. It's part of your base subscription with Office 365. Let's put it to use. I talk to so many organizations that we don't have anything to automate. And there's a little tool Microsoft gives you that I can put on somebody's machine, and it will actually map out how they spend their day. Somebody sends you an email about a status update, then you go check in this system over here. Then you write them an email that gives them the update. Like all of that, there's a better way to do it, and it will help illustrate that. And if I can show people examples, both the MSP and their customers, then they really start to see how this is the most powerful tool that they can own, especially when we're all having trouble finding enough great people right now. I want to put the people that we do have towards the purpose they're here for, not doing repetitive tasks, and that's what Power Automate takes care of for me. Again, you could turn me loose. I could give you a bajillion examples. I'll do one. We work with a big construction company. They had cameras on the construction site, all over the site, and then they had a guy who was telling people to wear their hard hats. And I said, what is that guy's actual job? And said, literally his job is to make sure everybody has their hard hat on. It's part of an insurance thing. And I said, but you have cameras all over the job site. I said, that's for security system at night. And I said, well, what if we took Power Automate and I trained it? This is a guy with a hard hat. This is a guy not wearing a hard hat. And every 30 seconds, we took a picture of the entire job site at the same time. And Power Automate will run through all those photos and then screen grab, that guy's not wearing a hard hat, and that guy's not wearing a hard hat, and send it to the manager on site. Then you wouldn't need that guy walking. So they spent from spending, $25 an hour paying that guy to spending less than $1 an hour having Power Automate scan the entire job site at the same time. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. It's a wonderful tool.
And just in case it's not clear for people, I mean, if you don't have the skills in-house to develop that kind of solution right now, there are companies like Insight. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that should not be the barrier that keeps you from doing those kinds of things, because you can partner and outsource, et cetera.
Yeah, partner with an organization, and a good one like us. We'll teach you. Look over our shoulder. You know what I mean? A lot of the MSPs that we've been working with for 4 or 5 plus years now, they've stopped giving us SharePoint because they saw us do it enough times. They saw what questions we asked. They saw how we shepherded. We're not doing lift and shift and just moving files. We're justifying SharePoint's disruption, how it's different, by showing all the new features and functionality that their customers will get. And so they stopped doing these lift and shifts that customers were kind of lukewarm or not happy with, and started doing it our way, where we unlock all those features. Then they're selling more licenses from add-ons. They've got happier customers. But at some point, they started taking that on themselves. Meanwhile, they know what we do even better, so they know when to call us in. So it's win-win for everybody. So yeah, partner with somebody, and you can learn it. You're not just offloading it to us.
Brian, we're talking here about using Power BI and Power Automate to avoid commoditization, differentiate yourself. Are there opportunities to do that as well in the realm of Microsoft 365 security?
I mean, absolutely. In fact, their MSSPs exist simply to, provide security services. Like I said, I mean, a single breach, no matter how it gets there, could take out a smaller or medium business. And I had mentioned this before, but I think that the most innovative ways we've seen it is to bundle services together and kind of have your good, better, best, but it's not just the products like email security or backup and encryption. It's also education on top of that, as well as support and support services. So I think if you're creative, you can really come up with packages, and we've even seen people package it by vertical. So oftentimes healthcare organizations, anybody's financial vertical, even law. We have a security package specifically for law firms. Under the hood, it may not look super differentiated, but if us creative marketers, you can start to talk to them in their language. And if I'm a law firm, you're like, oh, right, if I lost all my client data, I'd be screwed. And so now, well, here's our law firm security package. So if you get creative, you can bundle these solutions together and make some pretty nice margins.
So, we're talking about margins, and obviously the top line is a huge contributor to how much profit you're going to make on M365 or anything else. But the bottom line hinges on overhead. So I'll ask each of you just for a few thoughts on this. I mean, what are some of the things that can drive up Microsoft 365 overhead, operational costs, and do you have any thoughts on what MSPs can do to get more efficient and therefore more profitable? I'll go back to you, Brian, on that first.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is make sure you know who your customer is and how they're going to use Microsoft 365, which products and what kind of user do you have? Do you have a really basic user who potentially could cause all sorts of support costs for you? Help desk type of things? Do you have a power user? Mobile versus desktop? Are they going to be, if you don't understand what your client's going to do, you probably have all sorts of unknown support costs that are going to hit you. I mean, just the basic user versus the power user, mobile versus desktop. So that'd be my first piece of advice: is know what you're getting into. Don't just offer one package fits all, because no two companies are the same.
Justin, over to you. Any suggestions on cutting M365 operational overhead?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Brian said, first off. So building on that, one, know the products. You need to know what each product does, how it works. There's a lot of bleed over in Microsoft land between certain products. And then know your licensing cold. Oftentimes when I'm going into customer environments, I'm seeing them buying things that they don't need or doubling up buying things that they already have a license for. For example, I was just talking to an organization yesterday. They needed AI credits to use Microsoft's built-in AI capabilities, and they were paying $500 a month for those AI credits, totally unaware that another license they were buying included the same number of credits for free as part of that package. So they actually were buying twice as many credits as they needed because nobody told them that, oh, we started including 500 AI credits with this package that you're already paying for. Nobody was keeping up in that. And I'm trying to train these MSPs, certain MSPs, include that as part of your QBRs, a license refresh at least annually, if not quarterly, because Microsoft's pricing, while it's all out there, it's convoluted and it's constantly changing. Even the names of the products are convoluted and constantly changing, right? So we all have to, but that's an opportunity for us to show our value to our clients, right? To be able to keep and navigate that. So knowing the client environment, as Brian said, but also knowing the products as well and keeping track of licensing, that's key.
Okay, I love it. I'm going to give you each a chance to wrap up here as we kind of head into the final minutes. I'll start with you, Brian. I mean, final thoughts, final words of wisdom, suggestions for the folks in our audience about maximizing margins around Microsoft 365.
Yeah, sure. I started my career in IT, and I remember a general manager, business unit we supported, he told us that if I don't have to deal with you, you guys are doing your job. I think those days are gone. And I think Dustin's analogy of selling a car with a phone is exactly it. You need to, whether it's you're going to be a security expert or you're going to be a Power BI expert or whatever, having your expertise and being able to sell beyond just the basic Microsoft 365, and as Dustin just said, that's knowing the product is going to be your path to differentiate. So you don't have to learn it all in yourself. As Dustin said, there's a lot of us in the industry that are here to help you and help make you become whatever expert you want to be.
Dustin, your turn.
Dive in. I've done this now with over 100 MSPs, and none of them have said, I'm going back. It's time to start, going in, and the more you lean in, the more value you're going to unlock, and the more you're going to differentiate yourself. It's time. And I'll leave it with that.
I love it. I love it. And if you don't do that, you are leaving money on the table and exposing yourself to competitive risk. So great input. Brian, if folks want to learn more about you, get in touch with you, or just learn more about Vade, where would you point them?
Best place to go is our website, which is vadesecure.com.
Dustin, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or learn more about Insight, where do they go?
They are welcome to come to our website, insightautomation.com. That is INCITE automation, because other spelling was taken. Or they can reach us at hello@insightautomation.com.
All right. I want to thank you both very much. If anyone's interested in getting in touch with me for whatever reason, you can find information about me at channelmastered.com. Channelmastered is one word. And again, my blog is at channelholic.news. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. And keep your eyes peeled for word of more webinars and online content from the good folks at Channel Program. Until later, have a great day. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.